Hey, this is Digital Deepak here, and welcome to the next video in the MicroStartup series. Today in this video, we are going to have a look at the company registration process. So MicroStartup Studio Private Limited is the name that we have applied for, and the registration process is going on right now. And before I start this video, I will also tell you what will happen to PixelTrack Digital Private Limited, which we registered back in around 2018. So in PixelTrack Digital Private Limited, I will be retaining my equity, but the CEO and the operator for that business will be Jayant, my co-founder. And earlier we used to focus on a lot of things in PixelTrack agency and education company, but the focus will kind of narrow down to sales training and helping businesses build their own sales team. I'm not continuing with that company because Jayant is successfully running it. We could also close that company and start a brand new company, nothing wrong in it, but it has a certain history. The company is 6 years old. It has some value. Banks will also see a company that is 6 years old as much more authoritative and reputed. And even if we want to take a loan for the company, like an overdraft limit or an unsecured loan, it is possible. So we didn't want to shut down that company. And why am I starting a brand new company? Because the entire theme of MicroStartup is to show you from day one, right from the registration process of the company, how we are building a company from scratch and what is involved in the entire process. So before I start this video, I would also like to tell you that this is completely based on my knowledge and what I have done as a research. And if you want further details and clarity, contact an authorized certified professional like a CA. And please excuse me if there are any factual errors in this particular video. So first, let's understand what a limited liability company means and why do you need limited liability? It kind of sounds like the company will be limited in its scope, but it's nothing like that. What is a liability? If I take a loan from somebody and if I have to repay it, then it is a liability. If I have some asset of value, then it is the opposite of liability, which is an asset. So the government understands that doing a business operation is a risky move. That is why people go for government jobs. That is why people go for private jobs. How many people actually start a company? How many entrepreneurs there are? 90% of the startups do not survive beyond the first few years. There are many statistics around it. They say within first 2 or 3 years, 90% of the companies fail. Within the first 5 years, then another 90% of the companies fail. And there are reasons. The first reason being the founder itself loses motivation, or the founder has a family problem or a health problem and he is not able to focus on it anymore. The second problem is co-founder conflict. You have a partner or a director in the company and there is a problem with them. The company shuts down because of that. The third reason is that you are not able to build a team at all. And how long will you operate as a single person? So these are the reasons why companies fail. And in most of the cases, like MicroStartup's own venture, we will not be depending on credit or debt from external sources to build our business. Whatever business investment that we will be doing is from the cash flow itself, which you will see from the operation and growth of this company. But in many cases, like for example, a manufacturing company, somebody might want to buy a manufacturing unit, and to buy that unit, they might take a loan in a bank. And tomorrow, if they are not able to produce enough goods and sell it successfully, then the company has a net liability and the balance sheet will be negative and they might shut down the company. And if they shut down the company, the people who are yet to take payment from the company, like a loan or some vendor who is yet to be paid, they cannot sue the director of the company. So the company itself becomes like a person. It becomes a separate legal entity. It has a separate direct and indirect tax ID, which is PAN and GST in India. And whatever you do with the company, the limitation of liability is with the company itself. So if you are doing a sole proprietorship company, have taken a 50 lakh loan for the business, and if you cannot repay that, and let's say if you have a 50 lakh flat, the person who lent out money to the company can also go to the court and try to acquire your flat or your house, which is 50 lakhs worth, to get the loan repaid. That cannot be done with a limited liability company. You also form a separate company and a legal entity like a private limited company because you might be having partners. It has a brand name and life of its own. Like for example, MicroStartup as a company, my intention is for the company to survive beyond my lifetime, which means the company has to survive for another 100 years, 200 years, or probably for an infinite time. And I might give my director position to somebody else in the company. I might let my children inherit my company, and all that can be done with a private limited company. The company also has something called corporate identification number, CIN. Partners, directors, shareholders can be added or removed. The company can sue other companies and it can get sued. And whatever you do with the company and company operations, the liability ends with the company and does not extend to personal finances and wealth. It can be shut down using insolvency or bankruptcy code. Like for example, if you start a private limited company and you eventually shut it down, and there are a bunch of people who are still waiting for money to be repaid from the company, either as vendors or as people who gave you credit, using the insolvency and bankruptcy code, you can kind of shut down the company and start with a clean slate. And if you start another company, that company will not have any negative taint, which is because of the old company that you have started. The company can also own trademarks, patents in the company name. It can also own assets. You might have seen that a lot of people buy luxury cars in the company name instead of personal name, because let's say you buy a luxury car for 50 lakhs. Within 1 year, maybe the car depreciates by 30%, which means the value of the car has gone down from 50 lakhs to 35 lakhs. The 15 lakhs can be considered as a company expense, as a depreciation cost. So that is why you might have seen BMW, Mercedes ads, something along the lines of, appreciation for now, depreciation forever, or depreciation for now, appreciation forever, or something along that line. They will always advertise it to people who own companies, because people who buy cars in the company names, which is actually a personal use, should not be done, but it can be done, right? And apparently a lot of people started buying cars in company names. So there are certain restrictions when it comes to GST input credit when you buy a car with company name. And I don't have any intention of buying a car in my company name unless it is for company purpose, like you are buying a mini bus for dropping off your employees and picking your employees. Unless you buy any automobile like that, there is no reason for buying an automobile in company's name. So this is what limited liability is. And in India, limited liability companies are usually called LLPs or private limited companies. In US, it is incorporated or LLC, limited liability corporation. In Malaysia, you will see something like SDN, BHD or something like that. In Singapore, it is PTE, private limited. And in Australia also it is something like that, but the overall idea is the same. You create a separate legal entity for doing business, and it is not mixing with your personal finances and assets. The only company which I have seen which calls itself an unlimited company is Dropbox. So if I just go ahead and search for Dropbox International Unlimited Company, then you can see that it is registered in Ireland. They do it for some tax benefit purposes. And Dropbox International is an unlimited company, and this is the only company that I have seen which calls itself unlimited. I absolutely have no idea why they have registered it in this format, but a lot of other multi-billion-dollar companies are always limited liability companies. Maybe they did it something like, people are searching for unlimited file storage online or something. The word unlimited kind of goes along with the theme of what Dropbox is doing, but I'm just guessing. I have no idea. So why I do not recommend sole proprietorship is because if you are starting a company, the person is the business. To start doing business and start making money. So right now, let's say you don't have a job and you want to start a business. And if you have a job and you still want to start something on the side, you don't need to necessarily create a private limited company or an LLP or anything like that. You can actually start doing business. You need some documentation in the company name. It can be a shop registration certificate, local municipality does that, or you can register for GST. GST is required if you do more than 20 lakhs in a year as a services business, or more than 40 lakhs in a year as a product business, like a goods business. So if you have a registration certificate in GST, or if you have a shop registration certificate or some form of proof that you are commencing business operations, you can use that to open a bank account. And if you have tried withdrawing money from ATM, you would have seen it is either savings account or current account. So what is a current account? Current account is usually used for business, and the banks will not give you any interest on the money that you have. You can also do it with a savings account if the bank does not have a problem. But if you do a lot of transactions in a savings account, like lot of deposits and debits, then the bank will tell you that, hey, you are using your savings account for business purposes, so please open a current account. In US, it's called a checking account. But here, there is no limited liability. So let's say you take 50 lakh loan for a business and you cannot repay it and the business shuts down. You have to let the people who want money from you also touch your personal assets. Like if they go to the court and say that, hey, this guy owes me 50 lakhs. And if you have a flat or an apartment for 50 lakhs, then they can go ahead and acquire it. The court can attach it. So if you create a private limited company, it's limited liability. It is more important for businesses like, let's say, a construction business. If a construction company builds a building and let's say the mason did some mistake and somebody hurt themselves, they cannot sue you. They will sue the company, and it can be handled from the company itself, right? You don't want any personal liability. The intention is obviously not to cheat or do anything shady. But a lot of people do that. A lot of people create multiple separate entities to do some shady business. We are not going to do that. But it is still recommended that you create a separate legal entity for the benefit that you can have partners, shareholders, as I have mentioned here. You can give equity to other people. You can raise money. So all that benefit is there in a private limited company. So in a sole proprietorship, you cannot give equity to team members or other partners. You cannot raise money from investors. You cannot make an ESOP pool. ESOP means employee stock option plan, where you give some share of the company to your employees as well. You cannot build a reputation or credit history. You cannot pass on the company after you pass away to somebody else. You cannot sell the company and its assets, and the liability will extend to personal as well. So there are 5 different types of companies that you can start in India in a broad way, right? I will not be talking about HUF, which means Hindu Undivided Family, which is for certain religions to do a family business. But we are not even going to talk about that. I don't know any people who has a HUF organization anymore. So the entire family has a single legal entity. So excluding that, there are 5. You have sole proprietorship, you have a simple partnership, you have limited liability partnership, you have private limited, and you have OPC private limited. So OPC private limited was introduced in budget 2021. And from what I can see, OPC private limited does not have any specific benefits compared to private limited. I would say that if you have brother, mother, father, friend, wife, you can just give them 1% or 0.1% equity in your company and add them as an additional director. Personally, from what I can see, both private limited and OPC private limited are the same. But for OPC private limited, you have only one director and there is no additional director, right? There might be some people who are like, hey, I don't want any other person involved in my company. I'm not building a team. I'm just doing a consulting or something like that. And I want limited liability for it. And I want the company to have its separate legal entity. Then they will probably go ahead and do a OPC private limited. In my opinion, OPC kind of looks unprofessional. Earlier, they had a limit of 2 crores revenue per year for OPC, beyond which you have to convert it into a private limited company. But just go for private limited. It's just simple, right? So there is no minimum authorized capital or paid up capital for both private limited and OPC private limited. Private limited is definitely better for raising funds from investors. I do have plans to raise funds for MicroStartup Studio in the future. There will be something called MOA, AOA, which is Memorandum of Association, I guess. I hope I'm right. Articles of Association. We will talk more about it. Probably I will do a podcast with my CA and ask him what is the purpose of these 2 documents. These are just legal requirements. You have something called DIN, which is a director identification number. A single director identification number can be used for multiple companies that you start. And you have something called DSC, which is digital signature certificate. It's like an electronic signature thing. So generally, like, opening a company is easy. Running it is difficult. Closing it is even more difficult. Just like a marriage, where getting married is easy, but getting a divorce is very difficult. You need to think twice before starting a company. There are so many compliance requirements, which I will show you in the process of running this company, but it is the law of the land and you have to follow it because you are doing business in India, you are accessing Indian customers, you have to follow the law. In private limited companies, there is something called a board resolution. So you need to do a board resolution before you take any major decisions in the company. Sometimes if you open a bank account or get a bank loan, they will require a board resolution. Then you have to put a seal on it. And I don't know what kind of authentication a seal actually adds, but it is still being followed. It might be an old method that you have to put a seal and then you have to put a signature. Technically, anybody can go to like a local shop and get a seal done in any company's name. Sometimes in stationery shops, they will ask you to show proof before they can make a seal, but a seal itself is not like a very big authentication. But you will see that if you are submitting a request to the bank to open an account or close an account, they will be like seal chahiye, as if the seal is like some, signature which cannot be faked, but that's how it is. You need to do quarterly meetings between directors, and then there is an AGM formality, annual general body meeting. So these are requirements which were primarily created for very big businesses, but even if you are starting a small startup, this is required by law. A lot of compliance requirements will be there. I do not know of all the compliance requirements, but I will definitely keep you posted on what are the requirements as we are building the company. So in a OPC private limited company, the name of the company will be XYZ bracket OPC private limited. It can't give ESOPs. And if you are focused on team building, just go for a private limited. OPC also cannot acquire stake in other companies. You cannot even do securities trading with an OPC company. But with a private limited company, you can open like a demat account and buy securities and sell securities in other companies as well. Like for example, let's say your company has some 50 lakhs in cash lying around. You don't need to put a fixed deposit for it. You can even buy stock with it. And as far as I know, only one person can only open one OPC in India. But if it's a private limited company, you can open multiple private limited companies with multiple partners and directors. Private limited versus LLP, right? So again, the differences are very little. LLP has less compliance requirements. Like for example, you don't need to do annual general body meeting or anything like that. Slightly cheaper to register the company. Private limited company is based on Companies Act 2013. Minimum 2 directors should be there. You can have up to 15 directors in a private limited company and maximum 200 shareholders. Beyond that, you need to make it a public limited company where you are going for IPO. Maybe someday MicroStartup will itself go for IPO, and I might be able to share the entire process of going IPO. LLP does not have AOA, MOA, but it has a partnership agreement as far as I know, but verify it with professionals. Higher likelihood of getting loans from banks if you are a private limited company, and in general a private limited company is seen as more authoritative and more reputed. In LLP, board meetings is not required. LLP also has a limited liability. Cost of incorporation is almost the same, and the last time I checked, the corporate profit tax is 25% for private limited company, but for LLP it is 30%. And 25% up to 400 crores for private limited. Beyond 400 crores, we might have to pay 30%. And yes, you have something called surcharge, you have something called cess, which are additional taxes that you pay on top of the taxes that you pay. I don't know why the system is so complicated, but you have to deal with it. I'm not necessarily very happy with the amount of paperwork that I have to do just to start a new company. But that's what I'm teaching you. You have to learn it. So what you are learning here in MicroStartup is street smart business education, not like theoretical business education. I'm literally showing you the entire process of building up a company and then acquiring clients, making money, hiring people. You get to see everything, including the mistakes that I do. So let's look at the mail that I got from my CA office, and you need to give a brief idea of what the company does, like you are doing software education, whatever it might be. Minimum requirement is at least 2 directors for a private limited company. What are the documents needed? You need PAN card, you need identity proof of all directors and members, you need Aadhaar card. Without Aadhaar card, you cannot open a private limited company. As far as I know, according to the law, having an Aadhaar card is not compulsory, but it is kind of unofficially compulsory because in India, you can't really do anything without an Aadhaar card. I don't know why the identity proof of Aadhaar card is not alone. Then you have to give driving license. Then you have to give passport as well. What if somebody wants to start a company who does not drive? He always takes Uber and he's not traveling outside the country and does not have a passport. I don't know. Why isn't Aadhaar card enough? But again, this is the requirement. One passport size photo of all directors and members, fair enough. You need to put a photo there. Address proof, Aadhaar card, bank statement, electricity bill, telephone bill or mobile bill. Proof of office address, you need like an office address or a virtual office address if you want to start a private limited company. Now you need utility bill for the office address as well, which is like an electricity bill of office address. So fortunately we already have an office, so we can go through this process. But if you do not have a registered office address, maybe you can get a separate door number for one of the rooms in your house and make it like your office, or you can get a virtual office address as well. It takes 12 to 18 working days from the date of submission of all the documents by the client, and subject to ROC processing time, which is Register of Companies, which comes under MCA, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So let's look at the cost of the company registration. Digital signature certificate, 2,000 rupees. DIN, if you already have a DIN, then it's not required. If you don't have a DIN, director identification number, then you have to apply for that. I don't know why Aadhaar card number cannot be taken as DIN, but that's the requirement. Name approval. So you are applying for a name and that gets approved. There is a separate cost of 1,000 rupees for it. Stamp duty, 10,000, 20 rupees. MOA, AOA, no separate cost for that. Affidavit, PAN, TAN. TAN is required for doing TDS, because whenever you are sending payment to somebody, and if it is more than 30,000 rupees in a financial year, you need to do tax deduction at source. Because what if the freelancer is not honest with the government on how much income he has made? But if you do a 10% TDS, put it against his PAN, then he has to show it as income. So this happens because the government does not trust people and people do not trust the government, and that is why there is so much compliance requirement. Maybe someday in the future, we will be in a utopian state where the government trusts the people and the people trust the government. But as of now, at least the people have to act like they're always guilty, right? And you are always having an intention to evade, even though everything is being transacted digitally. So it's actually a pain that every incoming payment also needs an invoice. Incoming payment come with a TDS of 10%. If somebody is paying you money, they do a 10% TDS. You are paying somebody money, you are doing 10% TDS. So I feel like there is a lot of friction to move the money around, but we are doing business in India, so we have to be compliant, right? Making of a seal, 150 rupees. Auditor appointment, 400 rupees. File, 200 rupees. Printing and stationery, 194. Share certificate, which will be issued. I don't know why this can't be like online digital India, but this will be like a printed certificate. Then 4,000 rupees professional fee, 18% GST on the professional fee. So total it is costing 22,819 rupees just to get the company up and running if it is a private limited company. If you are applying for GST, once you start making more than 20 lakh revenue a year, which is not much, I believe in Singapore it's $1 million Singapore dollars per year before you apply for a GST number. But here it's just 20 lakhs, which means most of us will end up having a GST number. And then you have to do monthly GST filing. You have to do quarterly TDS filing. Then you have to do annual filing of your returns, balance sheet and everything. We are signing up for a lot here by trying to start a business. Company professional tax registration fee. So you need to charge something like 200 rupees per employee as professional tax, and I believe that goes to the state government, not the central government. I don't know for 100% sure, but professional tax is for Shushanta. Professional tax is more than 20 people.
No, if it like employees like more than 15,000 salary,
Okay,
then
you have to
200 itself.
200. Okay. So if you have employees where they are getting more than 15,000 rupees salary, then you have to do professional tax registration as well. That costs 4,720. Like you have to pay a fee to pay a tax, right? That's how it is. And then company commencement of business filing 2070. I mean, you are doing all this to start business, right? And then I don't know what is company commencement separately, but you can see that I am not very fascinated or very happy with the amount of paperwork that is there in starting a company, but it is what it is. You have to do what you have to do. So let's focus on building a business. Let's focus on providing value to our customers and growing the business. And let's take all the compliance requirements as it is what it is. Let's be stoic about this entire process, and let's just get done what needs to be done, and let's get started. So the process of getting MicroStartup Studio Private Limited is in process to open the company. Once the company is opened, so first we are waiting for the name approval. We have applied for MicroStartup Studio Private Limited, and then we have MicroStartup Labs Private Limited as the alternative name option. Hopefully, MicroStartup Studio Private Limited itself will be approved. I can also go to MCA search and look at existing company names, and here what is 37 plus 52, 52, 62, 72, 82, 89, and here you have to check the company name. So let's say if I search for MicroStartup with a space, there already seems to be somebody who has created MicroStartup Capital Private Limited, but status is rejected. I don't know why. If I search for MicroStartup as a single word and search for studio, then I can't see any names like that. If you search for, let's say, our existing company name, Pixel Track Digital, you can see that this is our existing company. It has a CIN number, and the name status is allocated. So hopefully the name will be allocated, and once the name is allocated, AOA, MOA will come, and then we have to open the bank accounts. Then we have to apply for a payment gateway account, which is also another lengthy process. But see, thankfully, we have people who help us with this. We have our professional CA's office who will handle most of the compliance and legal requirements. And it's a one-time process, right? Once you open the company, once the bank account is opened, and once the payment gateway account is opened, you will probably not have any botheration for years. As long as you are compliant, pay all your taxes and everything, you can focus on the business, right? You can focus on creating value for your customers, growing the revenues, and focus on personal wealth building as well. So that's that for this particular video on the process of registering a private limited company. Hope you are having as much fun as I am having. At least I get to talk to my audience about the difficulties of registering a company and share some of my feelings. And we will also create an inner circle, a community of MicroStartup founders. And I will be letting you know about the inner circle soon enough. But for now, just follow me on this YouTube channel. Let the bank account and payment gateway accounts get ready, and then we will start making revenue. So thanks a lot for watching this video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.